The first question is, what are some setbacks you've experienced navigating the industry? Second question is, what would your ideal world look like in this industry? And the third question is, how do we fix the problems we face? How do we create the world we want? So with that, quick introductions, and if I'm missing anything because we don't have it all on the thing, we have Ser Anzoategi from Vida and East Los High and some other amazing shows. This is a trans, mass, non-binary panel, and we only have Ser as the ID non-binary person. So unfortunately, Sarah, you have a lot, but I'm gonna piggyback on that because I have been championing the non-binary cause of it. But we all with you. All my non-binary motherfuckers make some noise. All right. So we have Jet Garrison here, director, editor, creative extraordinaire. Just did these thems, and what else? Tell us some more of your credits.
I'll talk more about that later.
Okay, great. We have Leo Sheng right here, who is in Reese Ernst Adam, and who was also now in this new L Word. Get up. We have Brian Michael Smith, who has been on Queen Sugar, and is also on the newest L Word. We have Sean Dasani here on Razor Tongue and These Thems. We have Scott Turner Schofield, who has been on Bold and the Beautiful. Also, I forget what that film's name was. The Conductor. Any other ones? Scott's fucking brilliant. And then you have me. I'm D-Lo, actor, writer, comic. You might see me on Looking, Transparent, Sensei. I was a cabbie on Mr. Robot. Thank you very much. Yes, a sensei. I said it. Okay, so y'all, we're gonna get in this. Okay? Hurry the fuck up, y'all. Take it away. Setbacks. We're talking setbacks. Scott, are you gonna hop in a seat? I don't mean to turn my back towards you, but it's a good butt. Right.
I remember the first acting class that I was in. It was a commercial acting class. I was new into my transition, and I also knew that the teacher of the class, didn't know anything about me, and I didn't know how to navigate that. And that was really challenging. And the first agent meetings that I had, because I was doing activism work as well at the same time, and I thought if they Google me, they will know that I'm trans. But I also didn't know how to have that conversation. I talked to some friends about it, and I just thought, as you go into these meetings, you're gonna go and tell them, because this was 2013, 2014. It wasn't that long ago, but I didn't know other trans actors except for you, and and that was such a blessing to have you as a resource. But now look at where we are. And it's been 5 years, and look at where we are. So I hope for anyone here today, it's like you have people in community and folks you can talk to figure out how to navigate, because we are navigating it now. Yeah.
Well, and part of the navigation of it has been, we're all working together now doing this Transmass cohort, part of 50/50 by 2020, which Jill Soloway set us up to do. And in doing that, it's been so illuminating to see how much different talent there is. But in the setback kind of way, I'm kind of like, wow, we're not getting much traction in this culture. We're not being paid attention to. We're not, where's our moment? Is it coming? Do you think it is?
Are you speaking more for transmasculine?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think Angelica hit the nail on the head, and we're starting to see it a little bit more in the more mainstream projects. I'm seeing a lot of things come through the wavelength, looking for young transmasculine characters, and things featuring a trans boy and things. So I'm seeing a little bit more of it, and as reflected on this panel and in this room, I think what is going to help us really get to that point is that there are transmasculine and gender non-conforming people in the writer's room of these shows, and they're like putting out the storylines for the characters. They're writing about and they're bringing their own experiences to the table. So it's not like the cis writers are like, okay, we got this idea for the trans character. Let's do this. Like, no, there's a trans person in the room saying, actually, I want to bring this in here. I want to explore this, and this is what I want to do. So we're seeing that, and we're here at Outfest with all these independent projects that are being produced with these very strong stories that are giving our voices the amplification that we need to attract the money. So I feel like we are kind of well on our way better than things were when I first kind of started out going at professionally in 2011, 2010. What I was seeing represented in media was mostly on digital content, and it was mostly on YouTube and things like that. And there was a lot of young white cis people who were talking about their early transition experiences, and I was already 10 years in the game, and I'm black, and I'm like, well, where is that at? So it's great to see that there's a character like that written for me. Like I didn't get a chance to write. I was in the middle of writing my own thing when I got the breakdown from Silas about what they were trying to cast on Queen Sugar. So I'm like, okay, it's out there. So I feel like enough voices are speaking now. Enough creatives have taken up the mantle and said, I want to write this story and I want to do it. What Rain is doing is what Emmett Jack Lumberg did with Brothers. That was a show about like 4 trans masculine people. So I think it's on its way for sure.
It's definitely improving. I think we still have a long way to go. I think, Scott, you and I have had this conversation, and this is hard to bring up, I think, when we're talking about setbacks. Something, I transitioned later in life, just a few years ago, and I had been making and creating independent queer film in primarily queer, lesbian, female community spaces for many, many years. And then was a member of all of these wonderful organizations and these, platforms to help raise our sisters up. And we're seeing that rumble happening now. We're seeing people like a colleague of mine from Austin, who was on Queen Sugar and helping elevate female directors, and Ava, and people like, who are the gatekeepers? Who are the people that are giving those opportunities? We're seeing that happen. After I transitioned, those same collaborators and colleagues and sisters of mine said, well, you don't belong anymore. You now have privilege. And that's one of those things you're not expecting until it happens. You don't take that because you're just trying to figure out how to live your truth, how to be yourself. So that really kind of gave me a pause for a bit. It took me back, and I was like, I see where they're coming from. And I think Nick Adams said something the other day, and he's like, the thing about saying that about the privilege is for any of us that can be stealth or pass or whatever it is, there's that moment though that privilege could be taken away. And you look back at my IMDb credits, and my, birth name is on those credits, and we have issues around IMDb, struggling with that. So you have to ask yourself, okay, now for me as a creator, as a director, how do you amplify and pay attention to that and still advocate for yourself and what you're able to bring to the table as a creative who has lived in these layers of intersectional experiences, but you still have this perspective that you can share, and how do we collaborate as trans folk, as part of the queer community, and not work in silos or not pay too much attention to tribalism. I could talk about this forever, but that's some of the things, but you have to also pay attention to that and think about, okay, now here's a setback, but now how do we get together? And we are slower to looking at what some of our trans sisters have did in building their communities to elevate one another, and we're trying to figure that out as well. But there's a lot of learned conditioning that we can go on and on about, and I don't want to take up too much more time, but.
Thanks. For myself, I just, there's a lot that you're saying I'm totally vibing with, but like when you're saying about writers, I also feel about producers. Like, it's got to start from the top, because then they won't hire the writers, and they're not open to it, as well as being bigger than roles than co-stars or background, because there's a gap, with that. I see co-stars and, lots of great co-stars. So, and also I think personally has been, because of the intersections, there's multiple things happening. But for me, one of the things that I don't get to talk a lot about is my thickness. Being a thick actor, having to maintain my the weight, the body, you know what I mean? For this character, I do have to. It picks up right where we left off. So, and it's embracing that my body and what that represents on the screen as well. And even though I have a great executive producer creator, Tanya Saracho, so open, so yes, we want thickness displayed, we want not everyone is like that. Pamela Adlon is someone who is, and so she was like, yes, you, and she went out of her way to get me to be like on the show. And I was just, wow. But when it comes to other roles, it just depends, And so it's like, they don't say you're fat, they say, for me, they say, we want someone who's cut, So it just depends on what, and also advancing, I really feel that the Latinx, Latine, community is, representation is so behind. And whenever we make strides, I often find that sometimes it's recognized by some people and not by everybody, depending on the generation, but it feels like, we're in a land of a lot of first times, we're still here, yeah, a lot of firsts, everything. So a lot of times people get caught up in wanting to be that because they're not visible. And so then where's the allyship? You know what I mean? Like Daisy was in Ace Lowe's High, the masculine presenting, positive, teenager, And I just didn't really see other races, like white people did not embrace it, And so it's very isolating when we work like that. And so my strides, my attempts and my efforts are to have something like that for us as Latinx people within the industry. Because it's about damn time. The Emmys, there's 2 of us. And it's not just about the number, it's about the productions too. It's about having the work, being able to be nominated, but the Emmys are Television Academy, the Academy members, and those people vote if you're a Television Academy member. And so that also is somewhat of a setback because you have all different kinds of members and, sometimes they won't even distinguish my face from other people who have short hair and are slightly brown. Non-binary, somewhat gendered butch, something for them. And so it's navigating that because that will be make or break a show. You get a nomination, then it's like, whoa, this show's automatically gonna have more of a life, generally. That's what happens. So there's that disparity or that gap between the members or membership, period. So if you are an artist and have the credits, look it up, how to join, how many credits you may need, or if you have enough, join and vote. And vote. Join. 200 something.
I am very, very, very new to this. We shot Adam in 2017. That was my first role, and at the time, I remember very distinctly there was a very slow rise in trans masculine representation from Asian folks on Instagram, so it was happening on a different platform. I got the role of Ethan and Adam, who most definitely was not written as an Asian trans guy, and my dumbass. Behind the scenes story. When I first met Ariel Schrag, my first thing was, I bet you didn't expect Adam or Ethan to be Asian. Because who would? What is it? If a character's race isn't explicitly stated, it is most likely a white character. And so to have that adaptation, change so much, including my character, and have it be directed by a trans guy, and so many queer folks on crew, that was my first exposure to it. 2 years later now, I'm on the Elder with Brian. And the casting call was actually for an Asian trans guy. It's not the first one I'd seen, it was the second one I'd seen, but the first one I got. I'm sorry. And he was originally written to be in his 30s. I am not. He was written as an Asian American. I'm Chinese American. I was born in China. I was raised here. I was adopted, actually. And so, and also growing up, I mean, sorry, I'm jumping around a lot to answer these questions. Growing up, you know, I briefly thought of acting, and then I realized there's gonna be acting roles for anyone like me. Like, let's be realistic, there's not. And then there are some, and I think it goes to the writers, it goes to the producers, it goes to the production companies willing to commission the series. I mean, we have a one season series commissioned with 8 episodes already, and so we are packed with so many different characters and so many different chances to really, you know, it's not a pilot where we're worrying about, oh, this might not fly. This is we have 8 seasons. Yeah. My gosh, I am so sorry, y'all. We have 8 episodes to tell these different stories, and I am so excited for my character. His name is Micah. I can't tell y'all too much, but I mean, there's elements to it that really resonate with me, and the fact that they are willing to tell more trans-masculine stories of folks who are Asian. And this isn't the only one. I see Ian over there. Hey, I never met you yet, but you're awesome. And we have Chella Man. You know, we've got Chella Man coming up in DC's Titans, and so we're seeing such a broad range of, 3 of us. But it's still, we're all different. I mean, I'm definitely older than Ian, and we have different experiences, and the L word is different than the OA, and same with DC's Titans. I just wanted to piggyback on what you were saying about body image. I mean, that's so real. I think as trans-masculine people, we're often told if we're not reaching the same standards of beauty for cis men, like abs and biceps and all these things, we're not going to be as masculine. I shot a scene the other day, my first shirtless scene for the L word, but we did one for Adam, and I was like, okay, so how do y'all want to handle my scars? Because I don't have the double incision scars, but I do have marks from where my surgery didn't go so well. And so what does that mean? They're like, we'll make it look nice, but we'll also want you to show your chest as it is. And I think being on a set, both Adam and the L word, where they are encouraging body acceptance for however masculine or whatever your body looks without the expectations of muscles and thinness and height. I'm very short. Anyway,
I think that a lot of us are.
Next question, sorry.
I'm just saying. But you know, what you were saying is that, like, you know, I remember coming up like right after Transparent started shooting, and you know, a lot of us trans actors were being asked to do you know, like PSAs and talk about trans representation in the media and Hollywood and all of that. And I would say that I'm just feeling this right now, especially because there was like, you know, that there are camps, and I know that this touches a little bit about what you were talking about, Jet, but I feel like I miss us all in a fucking whirlpool of queer, non-binary, gender non-conforming transness. And I miss that because I feel like that's really what all of us are about, is highlighting all of our different stories, but also remembering that some of our stories are about the community and the lifeline. You know, the fact that chosen families are literally our lifeline. You know, and I'm missing those stories out there because that can teach some motherfuckers if we're doing cis education 101. But what I'm saying is that could teach like how we thrive in this shitty fucking world. You know what I'm saying? Where we're isolated, where we're pulled away from each other, and how the trans, non-binary, the very queer, super radical queer story is so much the solution to the shittiness that is happening in the world, in our communities.
Well, but yes, and you did. And I'm sad that my first thought, as you were saying about like how important our communities are and how, you know, how you miss the community, which by the way I also do, but do I ever accept when the community is coming at full backlash against trans creators and trans makers and trans people who are putting ourselves out there? talking about call out culture. Like the more we do, the more we get called out. And I don't know about y'all, but somebody brought up at an earlier panel about our mental health. It is so hard to do this. Why are we clobbering each other? What the shit, y'all? You know? I'm talking to you, Adam. Okay.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I'm not going to speak on anyone's behalf. I don't speak for the cast of Adam. I've been thinking about this a lot. So those who are on social media, or not, in circles, might be hearing about conversations about our film Adam. There's a lot going on, and I don't want to sit up here and invalidate anyone's experiences or tell people that their criticisms aren't real. Because I think it's important for us to be able to voice when we're concerned about something and say like, hey, I'm worried, and I think that's fair. What I've been thinking about with that is the standard that we hold people to that we feel have reached it or have made it as if they are going to do so much better. Not to say that we're not doing a good thing or that we're doing a bad thing particularly. I think that there's just so much pressure. And so I was also studying to be a social worker, so I'm always trying to see like all the sides to this. I'm always trying to like facilitate a dialogue on it. I'm trying to see all sides because as someone who's part of it, it's really easy to want to ignore that and just think about the good stuff. But also as a trans person, as a trans person of color who has never, very rarely seen themselves on TV, I want to be a little selfish. I want to be like, I was in a movie, you know?
Good movie.
But again,
Made by a trans person.
But again, and that's, I mean, again, is the standard that we're holding ourselves to each other's to. What are we considering to be positive or scary or helpful? And not that, you know, everyone doesn't have a right to express that. I think it's important to. I also worry about the mental health of the people receiving the backlash. Because if, again, you go on social media, people are sharing their concerns, and there's also a lot of very, yeah, it's hard to read the comments. I will say it's hard to read the comments. I'm not getting as much, and I am, again, stuck on understanding it, but also being like, damn, it's hard. That's all, it's hard.
I think we've been so starved for accurate representation that we want to see something that's like our exact story, and when something comes out and it doesn't fully reflect that, there's this reaction to that. But it's like, as artists, we can't tell everyone's story, so it goes back to that, well, create your thing, or help with the creation, or reach out and be a part, but don't attack. You know, there's something you can criticize, yes, but you don't have to attack. You know, and I think that's where it's sort of rooted in, but you know, just really think about that. When you're having a reaction to something that someone else has created, is it really about the creation, or is it something that's reflected from your experience that is coming up because of this piece? And does that warrant an attack on the creator or some reflection in yourself?
And also, I think giving ourselves permission to make mistakes, to take risks, to tell the stories, because why not? Other content creators, other artists get to. We don't have to put so much pressure on ourselves. And as a community, which is what we are, we can hold each other through our mistakes. We can be there for each other. We want to have bodies of work, not one film. We want to be doing many films. These are 1 and 2 projects, but we're going on from here and doing other things because there are lots of stories to tell. And that's what I want to see.
And you know, it's interesting in mainstream Hollywood, like some creators get a chance to make bad movies, and they get the chance over and over again until their stuff gets good. You know, so like let us have some not so great stuff first, and let us keep sharpening the thing, and then we can grow and make some stuff.
Echoing on that, like, it's easier for us to attack each other than the systems that play against us. And as a creator, you know, I'm currently in development on a show that it's a super queer show, lead trans man and a lesbian in a relationship. That's all I can say for now. Major producers, major studio behind it, and we're doing the whole network pitch dance. And it's terrifying, the whole process, because I think about this. If this is the show, because there isn't a movie or a TV show out there with a lead transmasculine, transmale character yet. It will happen. Who is going to be that first one? If it's me, great, and that's terrifying at the same time. Because we don't have enough stories. And as our development progresses and working with our team, trying to figure out how we shape the narrative, how we talk about these layers, how we talk about our community. But at the root, right, we're storytellers. We're telling stories, and these are characters, and it's hard to do a balance of, but I want them to represent everybody from my family, because I want to tell all of our stories. It's really difficult, and especially when you get to that level of who is going to give you X amount of money to go and make that show. They hold a certain level of power. You push back, and it's this delicate dance because you want to get your story out there. I think at the panel, Reese was saying something about making compromises, right? And deciding, like, well, you've got budget, you've got all these, things working against you, and so how do you tell the story of these characters you really want to tell in the best way possible? And who is going to give you the funding to do that? It's a challenge. Like, I think a lot of people miss that in the call-out culture we live in.
A few things like I think about as we're speaking. One is what's coming up for the Latinx representation on TV. Can we have two shows in the same area at the same time? Gentify's gonna come out like November on Netflix, which takes place in Boyle Heights, has activists, has queer characters. It's like, oh, Vida also has, Boyle Heights and activist characters and queer. So, but there's vampire shows that would be like, all multimedia, like.
Trade a CSI.
Yeah. Something like that. You know what I mean? But it's like the perception, of people that are watching and the everybody. And something else too, I guess, like just generationally or the call out culture. Also, it's many different things that could, I don't know, but well, I'll say this for Vida. First, our biggest viewers are most. I guess you know what I'm saying, right? Like the demographic that watches us the most are middle-aged white men. So I just want that to land on you real quick, because it took me a while. I mean, I was getting recognized by older white men, and I was like, wow, this is awesome. The work is happening. Like, when you want them to see it, and it's only like brown people that watch, or it could be only like a little bit of people that watch it, and so that was exciting. Like, maybe there could be, something that could happen that, like, maybe they won't be so homophobic.
Maybe they'll stop gentrifying.
Maybe they'll start to, maybe that too, right? It's like, but then we have, it's so much to talk about. But then there's also this policing of the body, like, and that, my experience personally has been that I'm like shocked, but why do I keep getting shocked? If at every level, no matter if you're a series regular, I'm gonna get policed on my body, and someone I really respected, policed me and my body, and I don't know, it hurt me, and I was, I can't say anything, so, and it's hard, but it happens, and they say all the right things. So, and that's our biggest problem, when you say the right things and then you do the opposite. But nobody can see it if it's like, not in front of an audience. So it's that stuff that still happens. And then I think, is it because I'm Latinx and they view me a certain way that they could walk over me? So there's that kind of stuff that I think about, but yeah.
I mean, there's setback after setback after setback. It's like so many layers, right? When, from within the community and then out in the systematic, structural setbacks that we face, which come down to us in production, who gets seen, what stories get seen, what does your body have to be like in order to be seen. It's maddening, right? And so we can stay there. We can stay there forever, right? But I think the thing that we want to lead out with is kind of what are some of the solutions that we see happening, and what is the world that we want to create?
Be like Puerto Rico.
Right? Just tear it down.
Straight up. Right? Or not straight up. Queer up. Trans up.
I have a series in development with this digital studio, Powder Keg, Paul Feig's company, and it has been a thing. And I'm not saying nothing bad about anybody here, but it's always what we were talking about, the struggle. And even this is just something that I feel like needs to be said, but on every level, we all can bump other people. Yeah. Even if you think you're little, you're the writer's assistant or whatever, or you're the PA in the writer's room, you know what I'm saying? You can add influence when you feel like, when it's allowed or when you're asked for it. And throughout this process, like, I just, like, at one point there was a director that was offered to me who was a white gay male, and I was like, and I didn't clock it at first, so I like, are they trans? Are they of color? And I was like, I remember somebody saying, well, we don't know who like, we don't know anybody. And I was like, oh, okay, well, can you just give me a day? And they were like, yeah. And I got on the motherfucking phone and I called everybody, every fucking body that I knew. And I was like, get me directors of color who are queer and trans, I don't care if they're film, I don't care if they're TV, I don't care if they're, and I was like, and I brought in all of these people. We had like 10, 13 interviews. And at least they're being introduced to these places, you know what I'm saying? Where they never would, because by and large, they're generally white run networks or digital studios or whatever. Even if they are queer, even if they are trans, they're generally white, right? So it's, and they're well-meaning, you know what I'm saying? I clawed that. It wasn't real quotes, it was clawed that, you know? And I'm just saying, like, in every single situation, to advocate for the people that you know do not get the fucking opportunity, you know what I'm saying? And you can, and we can build this all together in a very beautiful social justice, radical, queer
Can I add
way.
to that? Yes. I just want to add to it, or no? Just really what you just said, because like I was like, in the very beginning first season of Vida, and Tanya was like, I want you to tell me who in the community you think, who's a writer, who do we need to know? And I wrote down all the names, 60 names in the community. That's community artists, I was like, because the opportunities they could, in those split seconds, who can we get to play this one? And then something may happen, you never know, something always happens sometimes. And then you're like, oh, now there's an opportunity for it to be flexible. And yeah, and when we get, we had Ray Facuda, to a Los Angeles activist, artist, to be in it. And that was thinking together and advocating on many different levels to make it happen. Because it's not just, you have to think all kinds of things that you need to be able to book the show, the role. And sometimes those are depending on privileges, Sometimes you may not be able to, you may be able to, depending on what it is. And they make it, she makes it happen. So I just want to say that, like, that's exciting, because we talk about how we're talking about the setbacks, but upliftments, like positivity, one person could make a world happen, and within that world, it's possible.
And there is something really going on between what you're talking about, Tanya. There's like, and I got to work on Euphoria on HBO. Got to be the transgender consultant for that. And man, Sam Levinson, white cis, dude, right, was like, tell me what to do. And I did, right? And he listened, right? But there is a sense of listening when Tanya's like, tell me who to find, right? That we actually are, we are empowered now. People are listening to us. And he took things through layers of producers and executives up at HBO that should not have flown. And by the way, like, tomorrow and next Sunday are the last 2 episodes of Euphoria, and things get said by this trans character that have never been said before. Okay, and it's like, what? You know what I mean? Like, because this white cis guy was like, I'm gonna listen because authenticity is the way to go, and let's do this all the way through.
Executive producer.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So I wanna open up, because this conversation is opened up, please join us in this place of like, where are we going? What can we do? Don't raise your hand, just yell. See you.
I love y'all. I don't have any questions. I just want to see it.
Okay, I'll go.
No, it wasn't a question. It was just
Hollywood is really good at
A little louder, please.
Hollywood is really good at hiring cis actors to play trans characters. Do you feel like it is? Are we getting closer to trans actors playing cis characters? And how do you feel that that might be for the movement? Like, will it cause erasure because now you're being seen as cis, but it's not telling trans stories?
I've played cis characters on TV and in film, and so has Jen Richards and Trace Lissette. So we have been able to do it, which is great, you know. But we could certainly do more of it because some people who have now been sort of closely associated with the trans role or the trans actors, they might be finding themselves like, well, am I going to be only cast as this from now on? So that is still a concern, but we're out here and we are able to do that. And what's great about having trans people in the, you know, as executive producers or producers, they can make that decision and they can say that. And then also within the casting community, there's been a big push within the CSA to make sure that they're bringing on trans actors. And a lot of them are like, for anything, we want the best actor for whatever role. So that is something that is happening.
Magellan in Razortone. Yeah, I mean, I think we have to also, we're at the root of it too as trans content creators. We're at the forefront so we can tell the stories the way that we want to tell them. We can shape the stories the way that we want to tell them. And this character was played by a trans actor, Magellan, me. Because there was a trans masculine person involved with the casting process, and I didn't know Rain. That's actually how I got to meet Rain and got to get pulled into that casting process. But yeah,
You were the best actor.
Get out of here, Rain Valdez, please. Yes.
I'm actually going to come down here just so you can see a physical intersex person.
Hey!
Thank you so much, everybody. It's been a really great day. I'm Stephen Graham. I'm the executive producer of the world's first intersex movie, which is called Pony Boy. Sadly, River Gallo, who's the star, the writer and the co-director of the film, can't be here today because he's doing something for NALIP later today. He's an amazing Latinx man. Please get to see Pony Boy if you can. I just want to say that I would really love it if this time next year I can be in the LGBTQ of Outfest. I would propose we put ILGBTQ because still many people in our community don't know what intersex is globally as a matter, right? And I would love to have intersex people sitting up with you guys next year as well, please.
I'm gonna yell because you just suggested that we yell. So I just wanna, it's not a question, it's more of a statement. The importance of supporting one another. D'Lo and that television series he's talking about, he emailed me and said, Case, you know, I want you to come in and interview for this job as a director, possibly, because they don't know who you are. And they sent me the script, I read it, and so I had to do my lookbook. We weren't shooting the pilot, they wanted to shoot a teaser. And so I went in and I interviewed with 2 executives. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say, I'm not gonna say that part, but I didn't get the job. I'm just gonna say that. But then months later, those executives contacted me and said, Case, we want to bring you in for another interview. And they happen to have a private directing program, like you have to be invited. And they said, you know, you made such a good impression in the room that we're gonna send you this link. It's a private link. The program is not open to the public, and it's strictly for female identifying directors. And so that came out of support. Even though I didn't get that job, they're considering me for something else.
Yes.
I really want to dive into it. Sorry for my bad English. So I'm really impressed of all this kind of, and I really like also that put the non-binary and the intersectional positions on it. And I'm from Germany, from Europe, and I think we should learn also from in this moment to have this diverse situations around. We don't have this situation in this moment around for web series and for contents around in Germany. And today I get the information that all of the graduation films of one of the most important film school in Germany, most of them, 60%, don't get into gender equality Bachelor tests. They don't will pass a Bachelor test. So we have so many things to educate around. And so thank you for this conversation. And I was wondering a little bit about this. Yeah, sure, the support, I think this is the best and the most important one, to open the door for the people coming after you, because you are the first one as a first Asian trans man character, as a trans producers. And so I think it's very, very important to see your things, to see you on screen, and to empower all the people coming behind you. And so for me, it's also important not to separate if there is a Latinx show, or if there is a POC show, or if there is a trans man. So more to talk about how we could support each other and building up this community in a more powerful way, and to do this not with the boundaries between us, so to help each other to go into the positions. That is what I was thinking about. And the last one is, I'm wondering to get more nominations. So we should change the nomination rules, because there are male and female, or no inter and trans and intersexual. So that's also a thing to think about this year in Hollywood. So yeah. Yeah.
They're trying to do that right now. They're trying to change that. No, I don't know. I said.
Trying to take gender off.
There are some. Are they doing that right now? You know about them trying to flip that, right?
There, well, it started with Asia K. Dillon when they were put into the pool to nominate for all the voters in the Academy, and they said, hey, what do I do? I don't identify in either, so choose what they said. Choose which one you want.
Yeah.
So there's still not enough. I mean, we're still in the television academy. They think I'm Sara Ramirez. We still there. I look like her, right? I do not look. Yeah. Some people think. I said that at the Nolly panel, but thank you. Yeah, I was like, thank you. But I was gonna show before she cut her hair and me with my hair short. Anyway, it's not worth it, because they're like, you have a doppelganger. I'm like, yeah, because we're dressing a certain, because she plays non-binary in the show.
Sid, that's why we had to have me and Sean on the same panel, because motherfuckers was just fucking it up.
Totally.
I just want to make a quick note. I want to thank you for that. I wanted to make sure that I don't think I am the first trans Asian person. I think Ian would be the first trans Asian person on mainstream media. I might be on a network, but I just want to make sure that he's getting the, he's getting the dues.
So you are all role models. So you're all role models to helping up also the younger ones to go into it. So.
Well, and I want to add on to that. So I have a question for all of you. A lot of creators that are not in the LGBTQ community don't even know that trans masculine people exist. When they say transgender or trans, they assume it's trans women. And so for all of you, I would love to hear ways that you think that we can invite people to understand that we are also part of the community, and our experiences are very different, and there's a lot of creative content to pull from there. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how we address that. And non-binary.
We're at the end of our road.
So,
but we'll answer this question.
Yeah, so for me, I think it's about talking about each other, someone challenged me about the thing with Euphoria. They're like, well, it's a trans woman's story, what gives you the right? I was like, I've been doing emotional labor for and with trans women my entire life. A trans story is a trans story, and there's so much that you have to bring to that, right? And also, she had got to speak for herself. And I just supported her and advocated for her to speak. I held that space and said, yeah, listen to her, right? So I think we need to talk with and for each other, right? We need to talk about each other as trans men and trans women and non-binary people and make those distinctions and help people learn what those distinctions are, right? And really talk each other up. That's what I love about Outfest. We're all talking each other up. Take it away from Outfest, right? Take it into your daily life.
I think it's also a matter of understanding how much power we actually do have in stepping into that and saying, if I'm not seeing it, then I'm gonna create it, I'm gonna write it, and do it. And just out of curiosity too, how many producers are in the room? How many people who have, this is perfect? How many writers are in the room? This is our network. How many actors in the room? Directors. This is it. We have been waiting for ourselves.
I mean, I can just piggyback on that. I'm working on the project that I worked on about a story about a trans father that's going to be in the True Transferable Soul, and working on Here With You, which is a completely trans cast, and featuring a trans masculine lead. So like just putting ourselves out there. I had to make a choice. I had the privilege of making a choice on whether or not I was going to be visible as a trans man in my profession, and I decided to do that for the exact reason because I didn't see myself, coming up, and I really didn't know if I was going to be able to be an actor. So just making the choice to be visible and using my visibility to help other artists who are coming up and trying to write their stories and get their stories out, lending my voice if I can, being a script supervisor if I can, just finding ways to help us make those dreams happen within this network is definitely the way to do it, and just telling our own stories in any way that we can.
My immediate thought, I thought back to a scene from Pose towards the end of the first season where Stan, Evan Peters' character, comes to the ball scene and witnesses. And I think that there's something very powerful about, someone who wants to engage in allyhood, because ally is continual, making the effort. Because I think we're talking about, yes, we have these privileges to now say these things, but I think there's still an element of us still being the other in many spaces. So I think that if you don't want to engage on a certain day, that's okay. And I think that being gentle with yourself and just telling somebody, like, there's Google, Tumblr still sort of exists. No. Oh my gosh. But I think, I think there's, so for those who haven't seen this particular scene, and not to take too much time, Stan comes to see Angel's World, and he's overwhelmed, but he wants to learn more. Does he? That's another, if you have to watch that part. But there's this desire, this willingness to make an effort. And I think that we always talk about how it's always our responsibility. And even when we have the privilege, it is still tiring. And so again, being gentle with yourself, hopefully for cis folks who want to engage in allyhood, being open and really it involves unlearning a lot. I mean, from the moment that people believe you're about to be born, you are in a gender. And so unlearning, being okay with confronting your own internal isms and phobias, and just discomfort is part of it. I think we talk about this a lot, but discomfort is a major part of it. You gotta get over it. I'm sorry. It's valid, but you gotta work through it.
I think what you're hitting on is a lot for us as queer or marginalized artists, that there's a lot of work, right? Like, we're also activists and getting our stories out there and talking about allied action. Any of us that are in the business here, like, how do we improve this visibility? How do we get our stories out there? Who are the executives? Who are the assistants that are at these networks and these studios? Because these are the people that are going to be elevated. They're going to be rising. They're going to be the ones in positions of power. If we can't get to maybe the cis heteronormative executive who is at this plateau and not helping us tell our stories, how do we reach out to folks that are going to be, that are going to help amplify and raise our voices and be those ones that champion us? And we need to continue to talk to each other, to elevate each other, but also be reaching out and saying, these are why these stories are important. These are why these stories are important to you. This isn't just a trans story and you're the cis ally. You are our ally. You are part of this experience too, and championing our stories champions yourself as well. And so that's part of that, I think, activism.
I would say what I was thinking about was step outside comfort zones. Like, sometimes I feel like I get stuck in, I'm not being included, I'm being rejected, and to turn it around, and when I'm lacking, I give what I feel I'm lacking, So it's like, I'm not invited here, well, I'm gonna invite somebody, and it's gonna be somebody that I need a connection with. Not maybe just within my own circle over and over again, but step outside and be like, I know it's uncomfortable. I have had to do it in East Side. I am not Mexican. I am South American, Chicanx identified, but that has been my lifelong experience, and staying in those, like you're saying, being uncomfortable and not taking up space is sometimes what we need to do, and just listen, you know, even if you feel like I'm not invited, I shouldn't be here. But, you know, like Eastside Cafe has stuff, and, but, you know, queer and trans, the East Side, you know, just different things, or, you know, and API, you know what I mean? Like, I remember that's how I met you. There was a screening of a sexual assault film, documentary. And I went to it because I want to know, and I also want to learn how it affects, you know, the API community. Like, it matters to me, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna go, and you know, and I know it's gonna be beautiful because I know the community. But at the same time, sometimes there is those things, those fissures, the tensions, and all the stuff that comes up. But we just have to be the generation, I feel, to just stick through it, or else the bigger picture. I don't know who's gonna win, you know what I mean, right now. So it's we have to do it.
Dire
We have
Straits,
to do
I'm
it.
totally with you, Sid, because I feel like it's Dire Straits and all the work that we're doing right now, like you said, Jet, is about activism. And I know that that's not a sexy word to some people, but I think it's sexy as fuck. We're gonna close this panel out, and before, if anybody else needs to say something, but I just wanted to say that this is a shameless plug right here. At 9 p.m., there's a film called Transfinite, and it is done for queer trans people of color. It was written by queer trans people of color. It is casted by queer trans people of color. Crew is queer trans people of color. It is a community project, powerful, inspirational, and
Director's here.
And the director is right here, Nilu Uman right here. And if you can come out and support it, you know, we're new to this as well. We're trying to figure out how to promote and produce and to publicize and do all of the things that don't seem like the sexy thing in our world of social justice activism. But this is truly a community piece. It is our offering. So many people offer their heart and soul into these stories. So I hope that you do come and join us at 9. And I wanted to say thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to Scott. Thank you to Kieran.